And this is how you can recreate Ryu Energy Blast of JJK Season 3 in After Effects. All the assets and the final After Effects project file are available in the description for you to download. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let's get started. To prepare for this scene, you'll need two background assets, front and back like this, along with the raw energy beam frames blasting out from the tunnel. First, let's arrange the timeline for the two backgrounds, letting the first background occupy the first 4 frames. Open the position property and create keyframes to animate the background motion, matching the original scene. As always, press F9 and tweak the speed graph a bit for a smoother transition. Next, duplicate the background layer to create a color transition when it shifts to the second background. I'll use the curves effect here to heavily crank up the blue channel so it matches the color profile of the energy beam, then add 2 opacity keyframes to let it blend in seamlessly. Do the same for the second background by keyframing its position. The key here is to make the motion track perfectly with the energy beam's trajectory. Next, duplicate the background layer again, change the blending mode to overlay, drop the opacity to 30%, and set your keyframes. Repeat this one more time with another overlay layer to punch up the contrast and add more depth. Now, let's move on to the energy beam. First, I'll use Motion Tile to extend its width horizontally, then apply roughen edges to soften the rough line work. Duplicate this layer and rename it to keep things organized. On this new layer, I'm adding Star Glow to generate a sharp, intense blue aura radiating outward. You can copy my exact settings right here from the screen. Lastly, add a subtle outer glow and switch the blending mode to soft light. Duplicate it once more and name it Distance G, dragging it underneath the previous 2 layers. Swap out the old glow effects for distance gradation to create a stylized color falloff around the edges. The trick here is to crank up the blur radius and switch the blending mode to add. Now, we'll keyframe the opacity of the energy beams to animate their entrance. To make the energy blast look much more dynamic, go to the bottom beam layer and set stuttered opacity keyframes, raising and lowering the values repeatedly down the timeline to create a high energy flickering effect. Finally, let's add some secondary elements to make the scene pop. First are the debris pieces flying out from the blast. I'll simply clean up their rough textures using roughen edges and adjust the opacity. We'll apply a similar treatment to the light reflections, softening them with roughen edges and adding a nice ambient glow using deep glow. Switch the blending mode to add and keyframe the opacity to sync with the impact. To prevent this reflection from overlapping with the main effects, drag the layer underneath the core energy beams and parent its position to the background layer we animated earlier. Next, I'll create a new solid and use the fill effect to give it a light blue tint. After that, use the mask tool to draw an ellipse, turn on the mask feathering, and set it to a subtle value of about 7 pixels. Apply Gaussian blur with a value of 20, followed by a layer of deep glow. Drop the opacity down to 20%, switch the blending mode to add, and keyframe the opacity for this specific segment. Along with opacity, we'll also need to keyframe the position property so the reflection tracks perfectly along with the rest of the scene. All right, let's drag this layer to the top and fine-tune the glow parameters to make it blend in. Moving on, I'll create a second solid to add a blue color overlay to the entire sequence. I'll use fill to apply a pale ocean blue tint across the screen. Make sure to keep the opacity around 10% so it doesn't oversaturate the scene. Now, to bring out the finer details, I'm going to add a brilliant light flare using the Optical Flares plugin to replicate the original look as closely as possible. Feel free to reference my pre-configured flare parameters shown right here on the screen. To finish up the background, I'm going to enhance the ambient lighting that scatters while the energy beam is active. Simply duplicate the background layer and draw a mask around the area that needs the light bleed, setting the mask feather to around 150. Use fill to give it an appropriate color tone, then change the blending mode to lighten. Don't forget that you'll also need to keyframe this layer so it animates in sync with all the other visual elements. All right, just add a subtle touch of glow on top to polish it off. Finally, create a new adjustment layer and use curves to fine-tune the final contrast and lighting for the entire sequence, and our scene is officially complete. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.